From reading the responses, I'm sure you know what to do by now. Have a straightforward talk with him without sugarcoating it. If he starts to cut you off or seems like he doesn't care, then just drop him. You mentioned he was a nice guy before the change, but the way he sounds now makes it seem like that was just a facade. He was programmed to think no one would look at him in an attractive manner and was probably going with the whole nice guy bit to have women talk to him. He sounds like a jerk. I wouldn't even bother with him. Story 1. Honestly, just tell him straight, don't beat around the bush. Just say, dude, you're being a jerk. Do you expect women to want to be with you if you act this way? If he doesn't change, well, some people just need to be left to realize they have no friends anymore. Story 2. Oh boy, you see these guys on here all the time. They think women only go out with certain types, quoting ideas like how they can't get a date because they don't have abs and women are shallow, evil creatures. So he's done all this work to get into shape to get a date, and now he realizes that's not the reality. Or actually, he thinks that is the reality and is confused about why interest isn't everywhere he walks. I'd be as blunt as possible. If this were one of my best friends, I'd actually tell him he's become a difficult person and explain why, and that's why he's struggling to connect with people. Chances are, he won't listen because he has this notion that his mentality is correct. Story 3. Tell him to read a book titled, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Maybe he will understand his shortcomings. The body weight isn't the issue here. Upon reading the original poster's edited posting, I believe that your friend is more of a narcissistic individual than a resentful guy with deep insecurities when it comes to women, or perhaps all 3 traits mentioned above equally distributed. Story 4. He treated women well initially because he thought it would lead to intimacy. Then he stopped the nice act when he got a good physique because he thought that would achieve the same result. Tell him to stop worrying about that so much and just start being a decent person. Story 5. If you confront him directly, you'll likely push him in the other direction. Instead, start reflecting his views back to him by saying things like, it doesn't sound like you believe women have much value outside being a potential sex partner. And then he would be more likely to try to argue otherwise and talk about how women do have value. Story 6. From what you've described, he sounds like a pretty awful person. Serious question. Why are you friends with him? Is he a decent guy aside from all this stuff? As others have said, a harsh dose of reality is probably the only way to snap him out of this. Girls are not interested in him because he's acting like a total jerk. Either he accepts that and changes or doesn't and keeps feeling more and more frustrated. Story 7. Honestly, I would have a hard time hanging out with a person who carried such a nasty attitude. He is currently being disrespectful. He needs to be talked to on his level. Story 8. His attitude toward women probably hasn't changed if he is openly expressing his objectification so blatantly. He just sees himself as deserving of their attention now. I agree that you should tell him kindly but bluntly that he's being an entitled creep, and women are turned off by that behavior and anger issues, which he doesn't even bother to hide anymore. Instead of developing character and viewing women as people with their own agency when he was unattractive, he focused on his exterior, thinking it's a golden ticket. Surprise, it isn't. Story 9. This will likely get buried, but I thought I'd offer you my thoughts as well. Health scientist here, female, 34 years old. First of all, you seem like a good friend. I admire your resolution to point out his behavior instead of ghosting him or ignoring him, which I'm sure a lot of people have done by now. In short, weight loss can mess with your head, especially if you had some dysfunctional beliefs from the start. He more than likely made the connection between being physically fit and being worthy of things like a relationship. In his head, it's like he lost all the weight. Therefore, he is entitled to female attention, so why is no girl interested? It surely is not his personality. That thought is way too threatening. So the logical conclusion must be that it's the fault of all females. This whole behavior of your friend reeks of anxiety, depression, and most of all, sincere self-esteem issues, which, in order to protect his feelings and ego, has turned into a narcissistic projection of his shortcomings onto his female interests, thus creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. I agree that you should be direct if you choose to communicate your observations with him. However, be tactful. Appeal to his worth, which has nothing to do with his physical appearance, Your obese friend with a relationship being a good example. Give him your honest opinion that his behavior is a female deterrent. Maybe appeal to his sister or his mom if they are in his life. How would he like it if they were treated as he treats women? Offer to be a safe space where he can talk about his insecurities, but be very honest about where this path of anxiety and poor behavior will lead. Loneliness. If he has any moral backbone, he will maybe listen. If not, let it go. No sense in watching a train wreck when you warned the conductor. Good luck from this stranger. Story 10. He follows people on TikTok and Facebook who have been getting arrested for radical views. Who has been arrested for having radical views? This is by far a bigger concern than anything going on with your friend. Story 11. How old is this guy? Just wondering if he's relatively young. Not that it excuses it. I know most here are telling you to basically throw this guy away, and you might come to that. That said, if he spent most of his life being overlooked or bullied because of his physical condition, that drive to escape that could have been the impetus for his physical transformation. I think there could have been a lot of misogyny in some of his peers that could have colored his worldview, unfortunately, as you've seen in TikTok and Facebook. You're a good friend to be concerned for him, and you have to put your own safety and sanity first, but I'd definitely call him out on it and tell him that you're sincerely concerned that he's becoming something that he's not or wasn't. Story 12. Guess he was never actually a nice guy and was only nice to make up for his insecurities. Not trying to sound judgmental, as many people go through this, including myself, but it's important to recognize and decide if that's how he wants to be. Because being that person, he will never be truly confident. He will rarely attract women because of that. And he will just perpetuate an unhealthy cycle that leads to emotionally abusive behavior in relationships. Story 13. As a guy trying to lose weight, I totally hope that my self-esteem remains the same as it is now. Sure, I don't get a lot of romantic interaction, but I totally love how my friends treat me regardless of me looking like a grizzly bear, and I really hope that doesn't get lost together with the pounds I want to lose. Story 14. He's not being a nice guy, he's being a piece of shit. Why do I have to keep up with a bitchy woman if I'm not having sex with her? And that's about female friends you probably know, right? He sounds less like a nice guy and more like a giant asshole who still doesn't get it. People like this were probably assholes before. He likely didn't feel deserving of his bad attitude while he was overweight. Story 15. How is he a nice guy? He sounds like an entitled jerk. He has an incorrect perspective about women and needs to get educated by having more experience with women. Story 16. As a friend, I feel the need to tell you when you have something that needs to change. I don't blame you for being like this, but you can't sugarcoat these things. Story 17. Losing weight is not enough. A guy has to have personality, confidence, respect, a life that is complete without a woman, and self-acceptance that is complete without a woman. It was never a situation of get the body, get a get-laid coupon redeemable at any woman near you. Story 18. Solipsism is an ugly worldview to fall into. Tell your friend he needs to stop viewing women as objects that exist for him and him alone. Be firm on this. Story 19. Now that he is done with the external work, he needs to do the internal work that he has apparently skipped. Women shouldn't be a goal either. You should tell him that he needs to focus on his life, his goals, how to be a decent person in society, and not have his life revolve around women. Women are simply not attracted to needy guys, no matter how good-looking they are, and as a matter of fact, people in general run away from needy people. He is still looking for acceptance or validation, but he's coming at it from an entitled place rather than the begging place he used to come from when he was overweight. He simply shifted perspective but is running around the same problem. He should get life goals, work at them, stop being entitled, and when he gets a personality beyond having a good body, maybe he can meet someone coming at it from a healthy, fulfilled mindset. If you have to be blunt, by all means, be blunt. If he doesn't understand it coming from you, he'll end up changing when he is ready to, and when he realizes that this obviously isn't working. Sometimes you simply can't change people, and you have to accept that they'll have to bump into a wall hundreds of times before they decide to change. Story 20. Sounds like he got the body through non-legitimate means, and they've altered his hormones and behavior. People who do it properly don't experience that. Story 21. Best friends are allowed to tell their best friends that they are being unreasonable. That is why they are best friends. So be a best friend and tell him that the reason women are not dating him is not because they are being unkind, but because he is being inconsiderate. Maybe also bring up that if he just wants to date attractive women if he can get them, sure, that is fine. But if it is a real loving relationship he wants, then that is going to take time and he needs to develop the patience to take that time. He should look for deeper qualities in the women he dates while also fostering deeper qualities within himself. Because if a woman can date a guy who is attractive and genuine, she will choose him over a guy who is merely just attractive every time. Story 22. Yeah, you need to tell him. Do not be horrible about it, but make sure he understands how serious this is and how this is a problem he really has to change. Story 23. If he is your best friend, then don't worry about sounding like an asshole. Being an asshole when necessary is one of the responsibilities of being a best friend. Story 24. I disagree with a lot of the advice in the comments about being direct. That might work, but it really depends on the person, and personally, I haven't had much success that way. I know I would react defensively when confronted like that, and it could hurt our relationship and possibly make me more stubborn. Another approach might be to start with something like, "Hey, I've noticed your attitude has changed a bit lately, and I am worried about you." Then try to navigate to sharing your observation in a way that recognizes his own issues and anxieties. I understand being angry, and you have every right to your feelings, but sometimes it concerns me how you react when interacting with women lately. How are you feeling? Finally, try to focus on the impact his behavior is having on your friendship. It's hard for me to hear some of the things you're saying, and I want you to be aware of that. Then give him some space to reflect. Don't expect overnight insights. Story 25. I went through a similar phase when my ex dumped me. Full transparency, I still currently struggle with the inability to not see every friendly woman as an option. It stems from a deep insecurity. Now that you've made the effort to better yourself and feel worthy but still don't get any attention, it's horribly frustrating and makes you lose hope. Make your friend realize he's not going to get anyone that way, and it will just make him more unhappy. How to go about that, I'm not too sure. I guess just don't try making him feel defensive, but he needs to be told. Story 26. Bro, what's better? Writing a book or getting laid? Getting laid. Okay. Bro, what's better? Writing on Facebook or getting laid? Getting laid. Then why are you listening to people who spend all their time on Facebook and writing books on women when they could be with women? Story 27. If you guys have been friends for a while, I need you to tell him upfront how it works. Tell him, just because you have lost some weight doesn't mean girls want to be with you now. You should act like you used to before you brought in your huge ego. Story 28. Ask if he wants quality relationships. If yes is his answer, the conversation to follow and his ability to handle it will be much easier. If he says no, then well, you have your answer on why he is being difficult. Story 29. This post could literally be about me in my early 20s. Every detail of the original poster's inconsiderate friend reminds me of my old self. I lost over 115 pounds and was overly confident about it with women. It was not easy by any means, and watching your ideal body get sculpted in the mirror week after week definitely makes you feel confident. What humbled me was gaining all the weight back. I hope your friend finds a healthier way to change his new narcissistic habits. Story 30. Your best friend is frustrated because he believed that if he became better looking, he would get more female attention. This is a common fallacy. All of the need and aggression he had before, which he poured into working out, now has nowhere to go. He feels like he made a major commitment that didn't work out for him. He did a good thing for the wrong reason. Unless he's willing to change his perspective and attitude, then I'm afraid he's in for more disappointment. The best advice I can give is to get involved in therapy to resolve these issues and pour himself into another passion project. Whether it be coding or community service, he needs another outlet. Tell him to keep up the working out, not to let himself go. He will be healthier, age better, and be less likely to injure himself. Oddly enough, people are attracted to those busy in their own lives. I only met my future wife after I resigned myself to being single all my life. I was horrible at dating. Story 31. The Vita chamber didn't change who Steve Rogers was on the inside. Even though he had that Captain America body on the outside, he was still the same person on the inside. Your friend has probably spent his whole life thinking if he wasn't overweight, if he had muscle, and so on. Now he is slowly learning that it's not all about looks, and it is disrupting his belief system. He's getting nihilistic because of it. Appearance definitely helps, but women expect that look and his behavior to be consistent, and they're not. With women, he needs to immerse himself in female body language videos so he will know when a woman is interested in him and when she isn't. He needs to date girls like the girl in his class and work his way up. He is probably very inexperienced with women. Right now, he is probably getting mad at women when they test him instead of seeing it as the challenge accepted. Challenge completed scenario that it is. Women want a guy that just gets it, and even though he looks like that guy on the outside, he isn't that guy on the inside.